Welcome to our webinar today. This is the last one of the year, and it's all about survey management. My name is Kim Lytle. I'm the Assistant Dean for Research in the College of Education and Human Ecology. And Heather is on our team, the EHE Office of Research team, and she is our EHE Quality Qualtrics Division Administrator. So Heather is, like I said, going to talk about when you have multiple surveys and how do you manage all of those surveys and keep track of them. So Heather, please introduce yourself and take us away.
Okay, as Kim said, I am with the EHE Office of Research. My title is Manager of Data Quality Reporting, but one of the functions that I serve as one of the EHE division admins. The other two division admins are Kevin Welsh and Scott Kaleli, and they are over in OIT. Their primary role is user accounts and troubleshooting passwords and those kinds of things. And my role is more user related and helping users use Qualtrics and troubleshooting issues once they're actually in and using Qualtrics. As Kim mentioned, feel free to use the chat window. She's here to help me facilitate, and she'll make sure that I see your questions or we get your questions answered as we go on. So we'll go ahead and get started. We do have several of these workshops every year. As Kim mentioned, this is the last one of Qualtrics Corner for the year, but we do have several different, not just Qualtrics, but pre-award, post-award, data management, all kinds of different things having to do with research. We do record all of these webinars, and so you can find those recordings archived on our professional development page on our website. I am available on a limited basis to do Qualtrics help, and I've just started doing open office hours on Friday afternoons. So between 1 and 4 o'clock for EHE faculty, staff, or students, you can stop by my office and we can work on whatever Qualtrics things you may be having. I can help you with troubleshooting. I can give you some survey advice, whatever it is that you may need. So feel free to come see me Friday afternoons. So jumping into survey management, one of the first things to think about is putting your surveys in folders. Just like you put your Word documents and other documents in folders in your Word system or in your computer system, you can do the same thing with your Qualtrics surveys. You can create folders and kind of organize things that way. And you can see there on the screen where I've got several different folders where I start putting my surveys in. And so you see the folders icon up at the top left. You click that. It shows you all your folders. You can drag and drop surveys around. Everything by default goes into uncategorized. So if you go into your uncategorized folder, that should be where you see everything if you haven't started putting in the folders. And then you can just create folders. There's the new folder button down there on the bottom left, and create a new folder, and then you can just drag and drop your surveys into those folders. You can also, on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a search function. So you can search by project name, you can search by project type, all different kinds of, by last modified date. If you knew you worked on something yesterday, you can find it that way. There's a variety of different ways that you can search for your surveys. The search bar right above that, you can search by keyword. So if you know you called the survey obesity something, you can search on obesity and it'll show you all the surveys that you have that have that word in the title. So it kind of gives you multiple ways to find what you're looking for. And once you've created a number of surveys, that can be really helpful. You can toggle the view. So you see view 1 and view 2 there. So view 1 is I believe it's the default. I'm not too sure about that. I think it's the default. But it shows you the status, how many questions you have on the survey, and the response time. So it gives you a little estimate of how long, especially when you're in development, how long is a survey going to take folks to complete. And the second view is more of a list view that shows you that same status if it's new or if it's active, but that's where you get the last modified date, the date it was created, and some actions and some other things. So you can toggle back and forth between those two views and find what you're looking for, whichever way you can get there. One of the things that I really like pointing out is the revision history. Qualtrics tracks revision history for all of your surveys. It's done automatically um, in the background. You don't really see it running, and it's just on its predefined schedule. It seems to be about every 10 minutes, every 10 to 15 minutes, something like that, it saves a new version. Since there's no real undo button in Qualtrics, this can be really helpful. So if you did something and then you know, oh, that was a mistake, I really messed things up, I want to go back to where I had this a half an hour ago, you might be able to go back to that revision history and at least get close to where you were before everything went awry. Um, so when you're looking in the revision history, it gives you this description which says auto-save revision. That's all the times that Qualtrics auto-saved what you were working on. And as I said, that just happens in the background automatically without you doing anything about it. You can also, well, so if you want to go back to that version, you can go, you can view it. So when you're looking in that revision history list, off to the far right, there's the view button where you can view it. And so you view it, and then you can, once you've viewed it and said, yes, that's the one I want, you go to restore it, and you can either restore the revision, you can export it. There's any number of things that you can do there. If you export it, it saves it as a QSF file type, so you can import it into another version of Qualtrics. So we've used this a lot when students have maybe left. Maybe they worked on a project. A research project for a professor in the class they were taking, and then they move on and they go get another job somewhere else. So to get the survey from that student to someone else, we've sometimes exported it. We can do some moving around as long as it's EHE to EHE, but where we've had students that worked at EHE and then maybe went to arts and sciences and needed to use the survey over there, this export revision has been a good way to transfer the survey across departments and divisions. So this is a good what I call the CYA category. So especially if you're collaborating with a number of different people that are frequently changing their minds of add this, no, wait, take that out, add something else, go back to the version we had on Tuesday. You can save these different revisions and you can put them in a folder on your computer, and you can label them things that make sense to you, and then you can restore them as you need them. So that's a way of creating a backup, if you will. Or you can just leave them in Qualtrics too. The problem with the autosave versions is there's really no way to tag them with specific information. And that's where this create a new revision comes in. So in addition to the autosaves, you can force it to save a revision. And this is really good for those times where you're adding a whole section that somebody's asked you to do, but you're collaborating with a bunch of other people and they haven't seen it yet. So you can add those questions in, give it a name, this description. In this case, I said, they've had a totally ridiculous question and I know they're going to take it out 3 days from now. So I put it in, I describe it. This is where the ridiculous question was added. I create the revision. And it shows that description in my list. So now I know, okay, that's the one that has that question in it, and I can go back to an earlier version. So doing that can really help you keep on track of major changes that you've made to your survey or major revisions that it's gone through, and you can go back and easily go back and forth between versions. Another thing that's helpful to do sometimes is print a survey. As much as we like to collaborate online and digitally and save paper, sometimes you have to do a paper revision of something. Somebody wants a paper copy. So to do that, you can save it as a PDF or you can print it. I sometimes will save it as PDF, and when you save it as PDF, you can see in the screenshot here, it's pretty plain text. It doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles on it. So if I need to clean it up, if I'm showing it to the dean or I'm showing it to somebody, sometimes I'll clean it up a little bit and make it look a little prettier. Or if I'm just doing it for just an internal review, then I'll just print it out straight the way that it is. And that's a way to get a print version of what you're working on. One of the things that I think is often overlooked in research is creating a code book for your surveys. And it's a simple thing to do, and it gets overlooked because it doesn't seem like it's that important. But once you get to the analysis stage, especially if you're working with a statistician, the code book can be really critical. Um, the other time that it comes into play is if you are also collecting, maybe you've collected data before you got your Qualtrics survey up and running. So maybe you have some data in a Word document, or you have data in some other format, and you eventually want to bring it into Qualtrics. Which we'll talk about that in a little bit, importing data into Qualtrics. So if you have that code book, then you know what those values are of the questions, and it will really facilitate that import process. So to create your code book, you export the survey to Word, and it has all of these default things checked. And so I leave all of those checked because in most cases you want to know what question number was. It's helpful to show the logic if you've built branching or display logic in there. It's helpful to show that. Most importantly, what you're looking for is these coded values. So where you have all your question text, it will also show you what that numeric value of that choice is, which is what your statistician is going to want when it comes to time for analysis. So that's really the most important piece. And then stripping the HTML tags, that just takes out all the bolding and italicizing, and it when Qualtrics prints that to Word, if you leave those HTML tags in there, it will literally have the HTML tag. So it'll be, bracket HTML equals blah, blah, blah bracket. And it's a mess. So I keep all, these are all default. I keep them all the way they are. And then I export it. So this is what it looks like when it comes into Word. Anytime you have a skip logic applied, it shades it in gray. Anytime you have a display logic applied, it shades it in blue. And anytime you've carried forward choices, it has those in green. So it has a really nice way of showing that display logic or skip logic or whatever things you have going on in the background of your survey. And as I say, those can be really helpful later on when you're looking through just exactly what was going on in the survey. Sometimes we'll create a survey and we'll do it, and then 2 years later somebody will say, oh yeah, remember that survey that we did? And if you still have this code book laying around, you can look at it and understand, oh yeah, that's why we did it this way. And because you've got it in Word, you can also put some text boxes and some other notes into this code book. So if you need to give even more description about why questions were structured the way they were, or anything that's happened when you've started looking at the data, you can really annotate that and have a nice record of what went on in the survey. So once you've got your code book, and say you have some data somewhere else, to import that into Qualtrics, to join it with the data that you've collected through Qualtrics, you can put it into a CSV file. Qualtrics really only understands CSV. It exports data in CSV, and it imports data in CSV. So CSV is kind of a stripped down version of Excel. So you put the data in Excel, and then you can save your Excel file as a CSV file format. So you put it in the CSV, and there is there's an example CSV. So on the far right here, there's this example CSV. You can download that, and it will pre-populate the Excel file with all of the header rows, all of the columns for all of your questions. So you don't have to put that in there, and then you can use that file as kind of your data entry form and start bringing that data in. So once you've saved that, then you can go to the select CSV file, hit browse, find the file that you saved, load it in, and it will bring your data in. So this is what the downloaded example of the CSV looks like. It gives you these two rows here. The top row is the long form of the question, so the entire question itself, and the second row is the question ID. So this is the question number, whatever that you've saved that as. And you need both of those when you import it back into Qualtrics, because Qualtrics needs both of those things to talk to the system so that it matches everything up. So you enter the data to be imported. And the important note I have here is when you're entering data, the numeric value has to be entered. So if you have a Likert scale from 1 to 5, you need the numeric value, not the text value of, somewhat likely, somewhat unlikely. You don't want that text value. Qualtrics needs the numeric value. And that's where that code comes in handy. So if you have the responses on a Word document that are in that text format, you can match it up then with the numeric value. And sometimes folks have those responses already in Excel. Maybe they've had a student or someone already enter that data into an Excel file. That's a pretty common format for folks to store data. So if you have it already in there with the text values, a little tip is to just use find and replace. So column by column, go through and say, okay, replace strongly disagree with 1, replace agree with 3, however it's structured, and just do them one by one. And then you can easily convert those text values over to the numeric that Qualtrics needs. So now that you've got your file saved and you're ready to bring it in, this is how you do it. You go into the Import and Export button, which is on the Data and Analysis tab. You click Import Data. It brings up the Import Data wizard, which is the same one that you used when you got the example CSV. You click Browse. You find your file. You load it, and then it shows you a little preview down here at the bottom. It shows you a preview of what that's going to look like. So you can look at it and make sure that everything's coming in the way that you expect it would. So you will quickly see if something's out of line, if you have an extra column in there, and sometimes Qualtrics will just tell you, this isn't in the format that I want, or there's a mismatch somewhere. But if it doesn't catch it, you can eyeball it here and make sure that everything looks like you would expect it would. And then you click Import Responses, and it comes right in, and it'll join in with the data that you collected with Qualtrics. So it will tell you how many responses were imported successfully. And then when you go in back to that Data and Analysis tab, you'll see all the data that you brought in. And it's just that easy. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that might be the end. Yes. So that is what I have for you today. Do we have any questions about anything? Is there anything that I can go back to and explain a little further, or is it pretty clear?
So this is Kim again. It looks like Liz might have a question. Is there any added benefit to combining the data in Qualtrics as opposed to another statistical software program?
It's really hard to say. It kind of depends on the individual case. Um, if you Qualtrics has a feature where you can add an additional field value. So you may want to do it there if you're adding that field value for other people. For example, you could create a field where you're tagging people based on whether they were in the control group or whether they were in the experiment group, or there's a text kind of a text analysis function in Qualtrics that will break down long descriptive text. You can start tagging some of those text values and putting people into categories. So if you were going to do that, that might be a reason that you would bring data in. But you can probably do some of that in the stats packages too. So it really depends on what the end game is with the study. If you've only collected a little bit of data and then you went to Qualtrics, it's probably maybe worth the time to bring that data in, and then it's all in one single data set. But if you've got a year's worth of data already and then you started using Qualtrics, probably not worth it. Probably just bring that together in the software. So it's really kind of a case by case. I can't point to one clear benefit of doing it that way.
All right. Well, thank you, Heather. Any other questions? So while people are thinking, I wanted you to know that this, and I think Heather said this, but the recording will be made available as soon as we're done. Heather will send a follow-up email with her slides as well as the video, the recording. Anything else, Heather?
No, I don't think so. As we said, this is the last one for the year, and this is actually the kind of the last in my pre-planned Qualtrics series. I am planning to attend the Qualtrics Summit in March, so I will have something once I've come back from that, and we'll follow up on what I learned there. But in the meantime, I don't really have anything else planned for Qualtrics Corner. I do have a website that we've started, so if you go to the EHE research page and scroll down to the bottom, there's a Qualtrics Assistance box there, and that will take you to the Qualtrics Corner webpage where all of these videos are also posted. There's a link there to a survey if you are having Qualtrics problems and you can't wait till a Friday open office hours. You can send me an email there about your survey and what's going on, and I can help you troubleshoot that. At some point, I'm going to start putting up some kind of FAQ type of things, and I've toyed with the idea of having kind of a discussion board where people might want to trade
Hmm.
ideas and thoughts. So that's what that is. If you have something in Qualtrics that I haven't covered in these Qualtrics corners and you think that I should, feel free to shoot me an email, and I will think about it. And that I think is all I've got.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming today, and thanks, Heather, for all this amazing information. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day, everyone. I'll get those emails out later this afternoon.